Hi, everyone, and welcome to another panel in MakerBot's Additive Impact 3D Printing Virtual Summit. As we talk about the innovations happening in 3D printing today, there are still challenges that affect progress. Among those is the shape of the workforce. In a still heavily male-dominated field, more women are not only breaking barriers, but also driving innovation and advancements within AM and the community. In this conversation, we have two fantastic leaders who are affecting change within the industry. They're shattering gender stereotypes and paving the way for the next generation. These powerful voices will also highlight how the advancements in AM are transforming the way we engineer products, progress, and parity. Joining us today, we have Lee Bott-Nelson, co-founder and vice president of business at Leo Lane, and Cindy Deekitwong, the global head of marketing of the Incubator business of Henkel Adhesive Technologies. And hello, I'm Sarah Goehrke. I'm the founder of Additive Integrity and the director of DEI initiatives, as well as a board member at Women in 3D Printing. I'll be your moderator today. The conversation we're about to have is really one that we mean to be a conversation. So we'd like to invite you, those of you joining us live today, to participate throughout. You'll notice the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We will have a dedicated time at the end for Q&A, but please do add your questions at any point for the panelists so we can be sure to address what we can as topics are on the table. With all that established and our panelists having joined on camera, I'd like to start our discussion by having each panelist introduce herself. I'd love to start, ladies, with your backgrounds and what led you to the positions that you're in today in the industry. Let's start with Lee. Can you please introduce yourself and your educational journey, your work in venture capital, and now what you're doing at Leo Lane?
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks very much for having me. I'm excited for this panel. I think it's so important. And you know, I think women in 3D printing is a super important topic. I'm the Israeli ambassador for women in 3D printing. So in terms of my journey, educationally, I started off as an engineer, a software engineer, and my education led me through behavioral finance and back to technology and business. First as a venture capitalist for over a decade, and then later as an entrepreneur. As a venture capitalist, our fund invested in object geometries, which is today's Stratasys. So I've been involved in this ecosystem for over 20 years now. That makes me sound really old. I am really old. But it's a fascinating ecosystem, and it's evolved so much in those 20 years. And as it moved into production, I realized that there were some big challenges that needed to be addressed, including IP protection and repeatability, you know, making sure everything is consistent. And that's what Leo Lane does. Leo Lane offers a software as a service solution that solves this. So we always say that I came up with the problem, and the really talented engineers, which I am no longer one of, but came up with the solution.
Well, once an engineer, always an engineer, especially today, as we talk live. It is International Women in Engineering Day. So,
oh, really? That's amazing. I always say I'm a geek. That will never get out of me.
Which is wonderful, and I love it. And that is all fantastic. So let's look now to the material side of the industry with a fantastic leader in Cindy. Cindy, can you please walk us through your educational and career journey and how you found yourself in the world of additive manufacturing?
Thank you, Sarah, and also say hello to Lee, the fellow panelist. I'm very excited, Lee. And firstly, I'd like to say thank you to MakerBot for organizing this fantastic event, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this. So the way I like to introduce myself is actually back into when I grow up, right? I actually grew up in Thailand. My family, it's actually very poor compared to other families, but we're very rich in encouraging the education. And I'm so proud to share that I'm a first female engineering back in my country. So with that, you can see it's a lot of pressure, right? Being a female first generation engineering, how do you really push that boundary where when you sit in a room, it's all male? So that's how I really drive myself, have a career in engineering back in Thailand and push myself to apply for the position in the US actually, because I have that ambition that one day I want to go back to my country and really push that female professional up right in front comparing to the male at the time. Since then, believe it or not, it's been 19 years since I moved from Thailand to international, spend time in the US, spend time in Germany, spend time in Japan. And that's where I came back from Japan in 2018. And there's a need in 3D printing. It's a startup in Henkel company. They say, Cindy, we need help in marketing. Can you join us? I think less than 1 second, go for it, let's do it. It's such an exciting industry. It's not that old, it's just like 40 years old. And it's so many dynamic around people, technology, adoption. And that excites me the most. And one of the aha moment for me every day is that when we drive one-step solution, using 3D printing, bring solution to the user. And that is make me exciting every single day.
Thank you so much, Cindy. That is a beautiful story, and I love every piece of it. And now that we know who you both are, and we've had a quick look at what you're looking on, let's get into a little bit of what we're here to talk about in this session on women of additive manufacturing. Estimates for today's additive manufacturing industry workforce place women at about 11 to 15, that's 15%. Of the workforce. It is still a very heavily male-dominated field. So I have a question for both of you. Either of you's free to kick this off. As you look back on your career paths, do you feel that your professional journey has been different than that of your male colleagues? And in what ways might you have experienced difference in expectations?
For me, the way I look at it now, and I share this with Women in 3D Printing interview, it's a perfect time. I repeat, it's a perfect time for female to step up in our industry. It's such a welcoming, the sense of diversity brings such a big value into our industry and drive forward innovation, team spirit, etc. So for me, when I look back as a female professional, and I want to share one thing, the most challenging that female professional facing is what? Ourselves. We are so tough on ourselves, expectations so high. And sometimes I think that's when you look at how the female develop in our industry, I would say, yes, there's a lot more male champion in the additive manufacturing, but in the same time, look at ourselves and welcoming ourselves to be a part of it. Don't be so tough in yourself. And that's how I see. Lee, you see the same?
I think I totally agree with you. I think women, first of all, see what they can't do instead of what they can do. And you really can do so much. And I also think that because we come, on average, this is all, vast generalizations, but on average, we come from a different perspective, a different way of thinking. And on average, we work harder to prove ourselves and to show, yes, this is something that I can do. And again, maybe this is me. I started off my career in the mid 80s. Okay, so that's a while ago. And the other thing is, I think this causes us to innovate, to really come up with ways that we can achieve what we want that maybe are not the beaten path, the way everybody else does it. And I think that in a really innovative industry like AM, that's a huge plus. And it comes from everything in life. I remember my first job in Israel, everybody goes to the army after, high school. So my first job was in the army. And you go to, I wasn't going to do an army career or anything like that. You do your 2 years. And if you're idealistic, as I was and maybe still am to some degree, you want to do the best job that you can so that the army will have the best possible outcome. You don't really care about credit. And so you might find a way to make the best outcome come out, and somebody else may think it was their idea, not yours. And that's okay, because all you care about is the outcome. In the workplace, that's not so okay, because you really want to be able to promote yourself and to say, no, this is what I did. And so you need to innovate and find other ways both to step forward. And I'll say this for the first time, but probably not the last time today, dare. You have to dare much more than your male counterpart.
Lee, I'd love to build on some of those ideas a little bit, especially as we trace through your career experiences. When you moved from venture capital into AM, it really took you from one very male-dominated field to another. How would you say that you as a woman have experienced leadership in these fields? And maybe more importantly, how have you seen attitude shifting as the years progress? 2021 is a little bit different, we hope, than the mid-'80s.
Definitely. And even different than 10 years ago. So we don't have to go that far back. I think VC was at the time, and to some extent still is, the numbers are not as good as they not that the AM numbers are so great. I think now it's getting better. But I think that the important thing is the awareness. I think that there was no awareness of the advantages of diversity in general, not just women, way back, and even not so way back. There was a period where there was no awareness, and there was maybe this thing of, well, we don't know if that's really true, but I think it's really proven itself, and that makes it better because people are actively trying to be more diverse. And I have to tell you, it's also us. When I was a venture capitalist, I decided to check my contacts. Anybody that came and wanted to pitch a company to me, pretty much I give them a chance first time, and then they end up in my contacts. I had 5% women in my contacts when I checked. It was 2008, I think, when I checked. And I made a concerted effort and worked really, really hard. I got it up to 20% in a few years. So, but you have to really make that effort. And I think it's well worth it. I think the awareness and the fact that people, when I started off, people told me, what are you doing in math and physics? That's not a woman's place. I don't think anybody would ever say that. And there were really very few role models I could look to. I think now there are, and that's why women in 3D printing is so important, because it highlights role models. And for a young woman or a girl, that somebody says to her, you're too pretty, or you're not pretty enough, or whatever, why don't you go do something else? She can say, well, look at her and look at her. That's something that I really didn't have very much growing up. And I think that that's much better today. And I think that that's thanks to organizations like Women in 3D Printing.
Why don't we build on that a little bit and kind of open this up into just examining that bigger question behind all of that and a lot of the points you started with there. The big question is why? Why are we having this conversation? Why are we having this conversation today? Why are we doing this session focusing on women? Why do we still need to focus out loud about what it means to be different in the workplace? We're talking about gender parity right now, but obviously this extends to any sort of minority group who might look, feel, or just inherently be different from the majority group in a working environment, in any environment, but right now specific to obviously additive. Why is it important to both of you that we have this conversation?
Maybe let me fill in here. So build on Lee, the diversity, and I add one more thing, inclusion. Why is important? These two, diversity and inclusion, it's enabler, right? When you look at our industry, what do we need right now? We need some idea, we need creativity, innovation, we need teamwork, right? Teamwork within our company, teamwork with an ecosystem partner. And lastly, we need a better decision making. So therefore, when you look at diversity, why it's so important? Because it's drive all of this. And inclusion to me is that make that variety work, right? That's why the inclusion is so important. And as of us, we are a leader in one way or another. It's important that we think about this now, right? There's nothing is not broken. It's just something that we need to start building, make it better step by step. And that's how I see the wide piece of it. It's really, really a key for us to really go beyond what we are today.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think beyond that, it's about innovation. And I think diversity and difference. It's good to be different. My daughters have been raised on that sentence. They had it on multiple t-shirts. They would go to preschool. The t-shirt says, it's good to be different. Difference sparks innovation. Difference sparks a conversation rather than just, going on the beaten path and doing same. Innovation doesn't come out of that. And I think that there's plenty of research that backs this up. So this is not just somebody's fantasy, it's actual hard evidence. And companies are seeing that when they are more diverse, they're more successful. So it's really in their interest to do this. And this is why people are investing resources in order to promote it. And the reason we need to actively talk about it is because after so long of doing things one way, there are inherent biases in all of us, including people that consider themselves super feminist like me. And I actually don't like the word feminist. I call myself an egalitarian. And I actually took some tests that Harvard University put together, and I have some biases that I am not aware of. And so when they really trigger you to react without thinking, that's when it comes out. And that's why you need to actively talk about it, actively show it, give exposure to these role models again, and really have a conversation about this, and not just between yourselves in a closed room, but in the outside room, so that again, if somebody is confronted with this, they have an example, they have the data. Data is very important. The recent film, Picture a Scientist, I have to give a plug for that. That's, I think, a must see. It's full of data. So that's what we need.
Yeah, let me add on last piece on what Lisa said on the research. By 2045, I have a note here. We will become minority majority country. Let me repeat, 2045, we will become minority majority country. What does that mean? We will have more minority people than Caucasian. What do we do about it? If we don't start open up ourselves now, listening, understanding, take some action, I don't think we get anywhere.
I think those are all really critical points to highlight. Things shift. Things change, and it changes both intentionally, as Lee, you did with looking at your contacts, and they shift, a little less intentionally, as we're seeing with that minority majority that's going to be happening. And so keeping things, as open and innovative and inclusive as possible is critical. And we've, talked a little bit about some of the work we do at Women in 3D Printing. And just to highlight that for, a second, we have created over the last 6-7 years a global community that now has more than 23,000 members across the world, both women and men, who are very important to the community. In January, we hosted the 3D printing industry's first all-female speaker agenda conference. We had 147 women from across the industry, including the both of you. I was there as part of the committee, and I moderated several sessions. There's the people track leader. And right now I've been newly stepping into a role as the director of DEI initiatives, which is completely designed to help intentionally build actionable, accessible resources for diversity, equity, and inclusion across the AM industry. So I'd like to just dig in a little bit right here on this point. And how do you both see groups like Women in 3D Printing and the communities that these foster that directly seek to address issues of disparity being relevant in today's AM industry? Because there's often the idea of, why does this matter in 3D printing?
So I think for me, when you look at as a foundation, being a female, right? Feeling comfortable is not a healthy sign. That's why I feel that within Women in 3D Printing Forum, we stretch ourselves all the time, right? We feel uncomfortable taking initiative of the type conference, first female event speaker, right? And we lean in and lean on each other. And that's the nature of this team that I feel it's a spirit where we have a common goal and we take a small step, big step, and we do this together. We are stronger together. And that's ability of lean in, listen, supportive, that drive this milestone where when you look at how many people in the team right now is huge. And that is part of me being so proud to be a part of that journey. Lee, you see the same?
Yes, I think it's really important to lean in and to lean on the community. It's also important to have feedback, to have a feedback loop. In our first event, virtual event in Israel, we had a discussion about how to attract women to open positions. I hear this from lots of people. They don't get enough women applicants. And so if in an applicant pool of 200, you have 2 women, that's not what you want to see. And oh, I'm sorry, that's me. I didn't silence it. I thought it's nighttime, it wouldn't ring. But anyway, and one of the people that came to speak at this first event was Ronen Hadal, who heads AM at Lego. And he had several hiring processes and was very frustrated that he didn't have more women applicants. And we had a discussion in the group. And the takeaway he took away from there was to expose the diversity and the women in his existing group to the outside world in order to attract additional women. And to his credit, he went out and did exactly that for months on LinkedIn. Every few days or every week, I don't remember, he highlighted another team member with her story and her journey, and not just women, but mostly women and all kinds of diversity, and it helped. So I think that this is something that groups like Women in 3D Printing do in an organized way. If we wait for every single person to take the initiative, it'll go slower. If we have an organization that pushes this, and I believe we have a job fair coming up later this month. So something like that is really I think very helpful, both for the visibility, but also for the possibility to imagine for a younger woman or a girl to imagine this is something I could do. So I think it's super important. And I think all of these initiatives, Sarah, are more than welcome. They're blessed. They're really a blessing.
There is a virtual career fair through Women in 3D Printing a week from today, June 30th. I invite everyone who might be interested in networking and or job opportunities to sign up. That information is available at womenin3dprinting.com. Moving forward a little bit, especially when we talk about how this industry is pretty young. Cindy, you were pointing out how AM's only about 40 years old, which is kind of crazy when we think about it and how much has happened in that time. But it is really young for an industry. Being young often means that an industry is open to change, and that's where we can drive forward progress on some of those big issues like diversity or sustainability. Cindy, how would you perceive the power to drive and foster change in this industry, especially when we look at this collaborative, nurturing mindset?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question. And for me, the secret sauce here is the word collaboration, right? In the very early adoption stage of our technology into the industry, we can't do it by ourselves. For me, I'm represent Loctite material side of it. Can we do it by ourselves? No, we need to collaborate with ecosystem partner, the OEM printer company, the software company, the post-processing, right? And when it comes to collaboration, I actually have a very favorite, my story around train. I ask people all the time, French and German train, who do you think train that go faster? People always say no, German, because they make a better train. And I'm saying, it's actually a French train because they learn to collaborate between train and train track, right? German make a better train, yes, But when it's come to the overall picture, right, they have much more collaboration. And that is a story for our industry where to drive that shift, that speed, we can go fast and go far. We need that collaboration.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that a fragmented ecosystem like AM really, really needs. And I also think that that's something that, at least, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or it's because of me, I can never tell the difference. That's something that I really pull towards, collaborating, integrating, offering that end-to-end solution, which means that you have to play well with others. You can't be, you know, an ivory tower of I'll do everything on my own and I don't play with anybody. So I think that this is something that our ecosystem really, really needs and can really make a difference. And I think that that's general, women, men. And by the way, Sarah, I really appreciate your comment that, and one of the things I love about this organization, and it's also inclusive of men, because I think men are part of this journey in an egalitarian world just as much as women. And so we really need to include and not, you know, exclude anybody. I think the events that Women in 3D Printing organizes are amazing and men enjoy them very much.
Yeah. And let me address also the sustainability, right? Linked to that collaboration piece again. We can start small. We talk about recycling within 3D printing, just a simple thing like a bottle after we use. We also need to collaborate with a third party for the recycling. I mean, everything built it on the keyword of collaboration. And it doesn't have to be, you know, big initiative. It can start small. Reuse, recycle, that can be something we blend it in, right? Of course, in the formulation work on behalf of material company, we do some research to have a bio-based material to be a part of the formulation, but that's a long term. And this is something we can think basic and do things on the sustainability aspect of our industry as well.
Definitely. I think that's all super important. And we've brought up some really great points. And just kind of checking the clock a little bit, we're going to move into Q&A in just a minute here. But first, I would like kind of your rounded out thoughts, culminating in some advice from you. What advice would you offer to a young woman today interested in a career in AM, or to a company looking to attract more diverse talent? Or I'll give you 3 options for advice, how a man or someone in a majority position might be a good ally or sponsor.
Well, I have advice for all 3, but I think I mentioned the one for the company. It's exposure to your women. And also the advice for young ladies is dare. Dare, dare, dare. The downside, and somebody told me this just the other day in another event we did, you already have no. If you don't say nothing, it's a no. If you ask for something, maybe you'll get a yes. So always dare to ask for what you want. Don't assume that everybody knows what you want, that you want a promotion or you want to change. Tell people, ask for what you want. And as for males, you know, I'm very fortunate to be with and work with a very egalitarian man. It makes all of the difference. It's mostly about awareness. I think most men have wives, mothers, daughters, cousins. They see this all around them. It's about being aware of what it means to include and how to be really organically inclusive. And you need to work at it. Once you work at it, it comes naturally. You know, the 10th time is easier than the first time, and the 100th time, you don't even feel it. It feels natural.
That's a good point. I like that a lot, Lee. And from my side, the advice from the younger self, be your better self, right? Sometimes we get lost, you know, especially when you're young, you try to grow to be here and there. Sometimes stepping back, understand who you are and embrace who you are from inside out. For me, I have accent. I cannot change it. But guess what? I'm proud of it because I know I can communicate very clearly. I can convey my message in the way I want to. I connect with people with my heart, not necessarily just a language, right? So that is very key thing for me, for the younger professional out there. Understand who you are and embrace it. It's okay. Another aspect I want to leave out here is about work-life balance. Younger professional, mom, parent, dad, partner. It doesn't have to be either or. You have your life, you have your work. Sometimes you blend it in, integrated work and life. Sometimes it's work, and don't be hesitant. It's okay to say, raise your hand. I have to leave early. I want to pick up my kids. It's important for me to spend time with my kids. And then you feel more empowered to come back and do more work. And it's okay to tell people at work, right? We need to stepping up because this is a generation, is the world we're living in. So the more you can speak up, we can make a progress together.
I think those are such important points that you've both brought up just across the board. And, you know, it definitely resonates with me completely as a woman, as a mother. You know, especially here in 2021, we've been living in a virtual world for over a year. And we literally have to bring our whole selves to work every day. We're working from home. This is my home office. You know, this is my workplace, and my child's nursery is right above mine. So I think it's really important that we embrace and understand that in each other and how that builds us as complete people today. And Cindy, I would also love to just go back to a point you brought up when we were planning this session about how you said diversity isn't about something being wrong, but it's about work being done, about needing to do things together. And I think you said it's so beautifully that it means it's not broken, it's just not finished yet. And that is going to take time. And with that, those wonderful points, I'd love to move into some questions we have from those joining us live today. And everyone, please, we do have a few minutes more. Please add any other questions you have in. One that I would just like to address really quickly is asking about statistics or data for more diverse companies are more successful. There is a very clear business case for diversity. I'm throwing a link in the chat to the latest McKinsey study on diversity. But this one does delve into gender diversity, race diversity, and a few other issues, just pointing out, yes, with a more diverse workforce, your company will be more successful. It will produce more revenue. The innovation will be higher because when people think differently, they're not all trained to come at a problem the same way. If everyone's coming from over here, you'll miss a solution from someone who comes at it from over here. So I just wanted to throw that into the chat. I did have a link handy for that one because there is a very clear case, other than the obvious of just being good people. It makes bottom line sense to diversify. So now we've got a question as well about role models and sparking interest. The question is, as a middle school coding teacher, I'm seeing a genuine interest from girls that want to code. How do you feel that we can continue to spark that interest to our next generation?
I think that's where in school is where it's most important to maintain that interest and spark it. I think part of it is what you said in the introduction to the question, role models. Bringing in role models to these group of girl coders is a great way for them to ask questions and what's bothering them. There's an organization called She Codes. And they have a branch in Israel that's, I think Google here is organizing it. And they invited me once to speak on Women's International Day. The questions that these girls asked were phenomenal. And having a discussion with them was great for me, was great for them, and was great for the software managers at Google. They were so amazed. So I think it's a win-win, exposing them to role models and to possibilities. Because I came from AM, which is not your normal first choice when you code, it's something they had never seen, and it sparked so many ideas in a 1-hour session. It was amazing. I really recommend it.
I think that's really important. There are great groups out there, just so many. Just look for them, especially today, because again, International Women in Engineering Day. It's a great day to go around Twitter looking at some hashtags, and a lot of groups that do work in these areas will have some wonderful resources for you. Women in 3D Printing also has a Next Gen program that looks to directly connect mentors and mentees new to the industry and produce events and networking opportunities for people in the next generation, but definitely representation and role models.
And another thing is mentoring. Mentoring is amazing. It's very, very useful for everybody, men and women. But again, because a lot of young ladies do not dare, they don't ask for mentors. So having a program like this, like Women in 3D Printing is doing, is very important in enabling them to push themselves forward, because they do get a mentor. And I think that's awesome.
Definitely. And it also goes, company specific to what the employers directly can do. So there's a question addressing that, which those of us speaking right now can't answer, since none of us are actually with MakerBot. But the question relates to what initiatives does MakerBot have, if any, to support the entry of people of color into the AM industry. She says, we work with youth of color in Metro New York City and are interested in bringing them into the space thanks to the great conversation. So we do need to look at initiatives like this, and the Next Gen program, there are certainly company specific. Once again, the three of us can't speak to what MakerBot specifically does, but I think for the organizations we are each affiliated with, that's certainly an area of focus, and how to bring more information and opportunity to traditionally, historically underserved populations, and expand educational opportunities. We do have a question about posting resources just mentioned. So if either of you are able to share any links in the chat, I will do that too, but I'm still scrolling through questions. Got a call for plays well with others to be a new hashtag as we lean into.
I love that hashtag.
I love that expression, I have to say.
We have a question about what has been your experience with different roles within AM? Do you see more internships as a way to solve the lack of women applicants?
Yeah, I can share my thought a little bit on that, because we just actually did it in Henkel, where we expand the internship program on the 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and we use the metric around having candidates that have diverse background, not necessarily on the gender side of it, but also the, the person in color, culture, different countries. So definitely that's one of the very small initiative, but that is working well. That I think it's definitely one of them.
I think it really depends on what the internship is like. I think what Cindy is talking about is really a very inclusive and supporting internship. Sometimes people have internship and the intern, answers phones and gets lunch. That's not a good internship.
Definitely. I've been adding a couple of quick links to the chat. There are also groups like All Tech is Good that focus on the future of humanity in technology, which touches on a lot of areas. It's a really active Slack channel as well that I've recently gotten into. All Tech is Human. Okay, it looks like we've got time for one more question. And that is, any advice for someone wanting to enter the AM workforce after being away raising kids, making a career change, and without an engineering background? Is there a place for older women entering the field? And before we open it up, first, I just want to drive home, absolutely. There is absolutely room. I am not an engineer. These two women have exquisite backgrounds that have brought them very directly to the leadership positions they are in. I have a degree in theater. I also have a degree in English. I had a minor in Spanish. My liberal arts background is not one that you would look at and say, oh, she's obviously going to become a voice in 3D printing and diversity. It goes back to a lot of what Lee wanted to bring up about daring. And I want to just add that embracing opportunity, being open to opportunity, is the single most vital career move. I took a huge leap to jump into 3D printing 7 years ago, and it changed my life. And I'm so grateful that I did. It turns out my background in industry research and some manufacturing played perfectly into this and made me well suited, but it's nothing I could have foreseen. So there's absolutely opportunity for people of all ages, of all backgrounds, to find an area, because additive manufacturing isn't one thing. It's not just engineering, it's not just marketing, it's not just writing, it's not just IP, it's not just hardware, software, materials. It is all of these things.
Everything.
And that's why it's so important that we're able to bring our whole selves, because look at our panelists. They're not just women. They're not just leaders. They are so many things. They are multifaceted. This industry is multifaceted, and that brings opportunities.
I think you really do need to dare. Sarah gave you the key, but while you're daring, my tip is volunteer. Do something with 3D printing in a volunteer position. Get your hands dirty in whatever capacity you like, whether it's marketing, whether it's operations, whatever it is. There are a lot of volunteer organizations that use 3D printing, and start volunteering while you're searching, while you're daring, while you're trying to get. Volunteering, besides filling your heart and being a good thing, also gives you some hands-on experience. And that is really gives you color and helps you in all of the interviews that you would go to, and all your discussions with people, and it helps with the networking as well. Networking is another thing. It goes with daring. Dare to network. Networking is hard, at least for me, it doesn't come naturally. My first networking session ever, I was red as a tomato the entire time, and I met 3 people because somebody forced me. A man did me a huge favor. He passed away, but for years, I thanked him every year for forcing me to network. He said, you cannot be a VC and not network. And I think that it doesn't just apply to VCs. Networking is important.
Yeah, and don't forget, experimental yourself. 3D printing still young, right? And dare to experiment, understand the user and understand technology. We have so many technology. In the end of the day, we want to drive that adoption. We want to be a part of industry and experiment yourself, understand your value and see how you fit. It's so many things that you can be a part of it. And like what we talked earlier, it's a journey, right? So dare to experiment yourself, try it. Do it, try it, pivot yourself, and be still in the very young and welcoming all the creativity. And that will help driving you to be a part of this industry quickly.
And it doesn't matter how old you are.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how old you are, your background, your gender, your identifiers. There is a place. We're building an industry that is inclusive of everyone and innovative. So if you're not already in the industry, it's a great time to join. Let's all innovate, let's collaborate, we'll do it together and keep building a better, stronger future. And with that, that is our time. Thank you so much to MakerBot for including this session on today's virtual summit. I think these conversations, as we touched on a lot, are vital to growing and to growing well. Thank you all so much. I invite you to network, connect on LinkedIn, on Twitter, find us. We're all very easy to find. Lee, Cindy, thank you so much for your experiences, your insights, and for being willing and eager to have this conversation today. It's brilliant to know you both, to work with you both, and to know you. Thank you again to MakerBot. Thank you for you joining us. And with that, have a great rest of the virtual summit. Thank you all.